Outlining is hard, horribly hard, ridiculously hard to the point in which I have spent hours and hours and hours on outlining in the past, which, that says a lot about me, but we digress. It's especially hard if you don't know where to start. So today I'm going to explain my very complex outlining techniques and a lot of tips and tricks that I picked up on outlining over the years to hopefully help simplify the impossibility that is outlining. I'm going to help you learn how to write a descriptive outline that will help you write your novel, your short story, or any given complicated creative work that you wish to endeavor upon, because these tools can work for any given narrative structured piece that you want to do. Outlines are the guides that help writers create their novels. They help you write faster, they help you write smarter, and they help you write simpler. Without outlines, you often work your way through. And that's not to say that there's anything wrong with working your way through your own project, but it can often get complicated if you think about how writing as you go often messes things up. For instance, a lot of people, if they write as they go, will spend years and years and years trying to figure out simple problems that they've had. I swear I'm not going to make a reference to George R. R. Martin here. That meme's been overused. But I digress again. Outlines can really help improve your writing quality and can really help you get through writer's block. In fact, I almost never have writer's block because I always have ridiculous outlines. It's more motivation block, but that's another video altogether. That's not to say that outlining means that you're never going to change things midway through. I have multiple times decided I wanted to murder characters in novels and then not, and that caused me problems, but that can be fixed too. However, I feel like I should introduce myself. Hi, my name is Rowan. I'm an aspiring fantasy author, and I adore writing. I also adore world building, history, and usually chocolate, but that's another topic altogether. I love teaching and talking and ranting and probably extrapolating for hours on end about writing and world building and history. So today I am going to discuss one of my favorite aspects of writing, which is outlining. In fact, I'm currently making like 5 different outlines, so I love outlining. Now, there's a great deal of I'd like to express here is the fact that I am not an expert on writing. I don't have a degree. I just write a lot. I like writing. So if you're looking for someone to explain the academic reason behind outlines, I am not the correct person for that. I'm going to explain to you the practical ways you can use outlines because I love outlines, and I think a lot of people are really scared of them. They think, oh, it's this daunting task, but it's actually a really helpful way to speed up your writing process, to make your writing process a lot easier, and to help you figure out a plot in your own story. Why you should listen to me? I write a lot. I have written 4.5 full-length contemporary fantasy novels. I am currently 18, so I've been writing these novels for a long time. And I do a lot of research on writing, so there's that. But this is sort of my base qualifications. I don't have a lot of qualifications, but I think that makes it more fun because people that have a lot of qualifications often want to try and convince you, oh, it's this, or this is the perfect way. This isn't the only way to outline. I have looked at outlines from a lot of my favorite fantasy authors, and I have looked at outlines from a lot of my least favorite fantasy authors, and they all look entirely different. Outlining is completely your choice and it's completely unique. So I am a firm believer that if you don't like any of my techniques, that's fine. Feel free to comment though if you have different techniques. I always love hearing about other outlining techniques, so I'd be happy to hear about that. But anyways, it's fine if you don't like my techniques. It's fine if you think these don't make sense, but I'm hoping with this video that it will help you take a step forward into wanting to outline, because outlining is really the scariest part. Well, no, everything's the scariest part, I say as I'm working on draft 9 of the book I'm about to query, but that's a different problem. Outlining is sort of the first step into deciding that you want to work on a project more in depth, and by outlining, you're really committing to yourself that you are going to work on this project. So I hope that makes sense. Those are my qualifications. These are my strategies. They help me write fast. They have helped me write a novel every single year for the past 4 years, and these are full length, 80, 90. My last one was 100,000 word novels. And I do this as a high school student. I do this as someone who has a ridiculous number of extracurriculars, and I do this as someone that is a firm believer in the sanctity of weekends. So I am someone who is very busy, and outlines have profoundly helped me write quickly. They have helped me write concisely. And if you are really interested in getting a project done in a timely manner, say you want to write a novel in a month, or you want to write a novel in 3 months, or you want to write a novel over the summer, or something like that, or maybe you're a college student, you want to write a novel over break, these techniques, these outlining tips will really help you. Now, if you start right now, will you be able to finish by February? No, because one of the things you'll learn is that outlining takes a lot of time. But once you have an outline, once you have all these ideas and you get them down, if you keep working on it, you will be able to actually write quickly with these tips. So I hope this makes sense. Oh, and also, in case you're wondering, yes, I do sleep. Now, I'd also like to note that these specific outline techniques are for novels. You can use them a bit for short stories, but I'd say more novella length short stories. These are not going to be good for short stories, things under 5,000 words. These focus more on longer narrative structure, more character work. These focus on things that take place over a wide variety of dates and locations. So while you can definitely adapt some of these techniques into smaller outlines, these specifically and the examples I use will be focused on full-length novel projects. But if you are interested in me doing one on short stories, I write quite a few short stories. So if you're interested in outlining tips for short stories, because yes, I do outlines for short stories, but please feel free to comment that because I like getting ideas and I like sharing my many hours of innate study of the craft of writing with other people. So hopefully I'll save you time by just looking at my videos. And please subscribe for more because I'm very interested in making a lot more of these videos and I will keep doing it. But if I have someone subscribe to me, then that'll be exciting. So now let's get into the basic steps. So now let's get to the basic steps, or you could say the basic outline for outlining your novel, because I'm a nerd. So step 1, collecting ideas. One of the key things to do when collecting ideas for a novel is a brain dump. For this purpose, a brain dump is ranting out all your ideas. Write them down, handwrite them. I can't handwrite to save my life, so I type them up. Use the Notes app on your phone. Use a giant Google Doc. Use a Word doc. Use a Scrivener doc. Use whatever program you are a fan of and just dump out all your ideas. If you're like me and you collect ideas all the time and you just have a bunch of random notes on your phone, I recommend going through all of those notes and picking the ones you actually want to use. Or if you're just starting from scratch, blank project, you just have maybe a couple thoughts in your head, a theme, a genre, an inspirational work that you really want to create a really cool version of it. Say you really like Jane Austen and you want to make Emma, but you want to make it horror. That's what you write. That's what's top of your brain dump. And then you start coming up with ideas and you just get them out. You really want to just have this brain dump, random ideas document, and you just want to keep going. And do this however long you need. For me, I usually just start with the ideas I already have and then I move on to the next step. But if you aren't someone that has a lot of previous ideas, if you're starting from scratch, just work on this brain doc document for however long you need to get as many ideas as you need. And this really helps kind of format whatever you're doing. You really want to focus on, in this step, what is your inspiration? What is your main interest factor? For me, the series I'm currently working on, which is a very long semi-contemporary fantasy series, my inspirations, well, it was the Mortal Instruments and the Vampire Diaries and the fact that I'm a Tolkien nerd, so that should give you a lot of chaos. But I had those inspirations, and I kept those inspirations in mind as I worked on it. The project I'm working on right now, well, one of them, again, I'm writing way too many projects right now. I'm writing like 5 things. One of them is a dark academia, which I can best describe by saying it's a Midsummer Night's Dream meets Game of Thrones. So take with that what you will. But what is your inspiration? My inspiration, again, Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon. The Pinterest board is chock full of these things. So keep that in mind when you're working on your project. What are your inspirations? How do you want to get to them? How do you want to deal with them? They're really important. Your inspirations will inspire you. You don't get an idea from nothing. You get an idea from something. You get an idea from combining a lot of things, and that is important. So get those things, figure them out, and be creative with your ideas. So once you've collected these ideas, or you think you've collected enough of these ideas into a master document, you want to move on to step 2. So basically, get all your ideas get all of the amazing ideas that you have in you because you are a creative person. If you're interested in creating a novel, you are inherently a creative person. Or maybe you're not. Maybe you want to be a creative person, but that doesn't matter. You will find your ideas in the things you love. You will find your ideas in your favorite books, in your favorite music, in your favorite TV shows. And that is what inspires you. Once you know what inspires you, maybe it's the beach. Maybe you're a fan of snow like me. Maybe it's cooking. Maybe it's gardening. Maybe it's running around in the dirt. Whatever it is that inspires you, you really want to hone in on that and use that to get your ideas, to jump off from them. And when all else fails, watch a TV show, read a book, listen to a podcast. Something in there will spark your ideas. I guarantee it. I can track what I was watching or reading at a given time by the ideas I came up with. Step 2, pick your medium, whether it be physical or digital. This may be confusing, but basically, pick the medium that you are going to use to create this outline. Are you going to use a notebook? Are you going to use a computer and an online document? Are you going to use both? So for me, I use both physical flashcards to get a good feel of the timeline and sort of a rough outline of my story. And I also use a variety of digital documents. For instance, I often will use Scrivener and Word documents. I'll switch back and forth depending on the project. Some of my projects are more Scrivener focused, some of them are more Word focused. There is no rhyme or reason for this, just what I was using most when I started it. I am a lifelong Word user. If you are not a Word user, I don't recommend starting Word. Use Google Docs, it's free, but I have had Word my whole life, so I am used to Word and it just makes sense in my organizational style. If you're an Apple user and you've got the Freeform app, I love that, just like writing stuff. That's beautiful. It's amazing. It's like a little canvas that I can just type stuff into. So use whatever physical or digital mediums you have. You want to make flashcards? You don't have to buy them. Get some paper, chop, chop, chop. There's some flashcards. Use whatever techniques you work best for you. If you have a really tiny apartment, really tiny dorm room, maybe don't use physical cards. You can use anything to make an outline. You don't have to go with my style. You do not have to use flashcards to get a narrative structure idea and then write scenes on the flashcards and then transfer those scenes into an actual outline. I do that. You don't have to do that. For the purposes of the video, all you need in order to start outlining is Google Docs or Word Docs or Pages or whatever other type of document you have access to. That is all you need. So that's basically step 2. Once you've picked this, you'll be able to start expanding on your outline. Step 3, setting up your own outline style. I've cycled through many outline styles. How to describe all the outline styles I've cycled through? It's impossible. There's many. I have cycled through styles within actual documents. There are a lot of outline styles. Mine is not the only one. Keep that in mind. Do not think that you have to use my outline style. Everyone outlines differently. This is a fact. We all outline differently. I say you want to start outlining by looking at the outline styles of your favorite authors. Find an author you like. I guarantee you somewhere there will be an outline style for them. That's just the way it is. There's are everywhere. You can find them. Some authors might have even talked about what types of outline they like to make. So that's really important. Find some examples, start going off them. If I ever make a part 2 to this video where I go really in depth into it, which I totally might, subscribe for that. But I will totally go into depth, and I might even give an example of my ridiculously intuitive outlining process. You don't need that to start, okay? Don't. Mine is so complicated. Don't start with my outlining process, people. Start with your own. Start by creating things. Look at outlines. Figure things out as you go. That's the fun part about writing. You get to figure it out as you go. There are 3 things that you want to include, or at least note, in your outline. So make a note to yourself. I do this all the time. Do this later. Work on this later. You at least want to do that in your outline. These are the setting, the date, and the character perspectives. These are sort of the bread, butter, and jam of any given outline. And you really want to start with them because you can go a long form from there. Setting, where does it take place? What year does it take place? What's the weather when it takes place? Well, that could correspond to date, but you really want to know when and where that's setting. So for instance, my first book takes place May to June 2017 in New England. That gives me a specific weather, that gives me a specific kind of vibe to the area. That gives me my setting, that tells me what it's going to be about, that helps me sort of form around where things are going to happen, what's going to be happening, where characters can be going. Your setting could be a distant planet, your setting could be your next door neighborhood. It doesn't matter, but you really want to get that setting down. Then you want the date. The book I'm working on right now takes place in fall of 1998. Well, summer to fall of 1998. You got to know, does my story take place over a year? Does my story take place over a week? That is very important to know. Some stories take place over a short period of time, others over a longer period of time, and it doesn't matter, but make sure that you know what your story is so you can help form a story structure around that. If your story takes place in a week, it's going to have a lot quicker pace than a story that takes place over an entire year, or even one that takes place over a month. And lastly, the character perspectives. Gods, I love character perspectives. Character is one of my favorite things to write. I love writing character. Characters are the best. I'm totally going to be making a video on writing characters, probably next. I don't know. I love them. They're the best. So stay tuned for that because I will give you hours of content on character writing. It's my favorite thing to do. And I will totally be analyzing some of my favorite characters and telling you why they're great and or why they suck. Because a lot of my favorite characters suck. But I digress. Make sure you know the character perspectives you are going to have in your story. Maybe it's first person. Maybe you're only writing one main perspective. Maybe it's first person romance. Maybe you're writing two main perspectives. Maybe it's high fantasy like Leigh Bardugo's Six of Crows, where we have 6 main character perspectives. And this is really fun because you get to figure out who your main character is, what they get to do. So make sure that you know who your main character perspectives are. It can be 1, it can be 4. I would say on a baseline, again, I will probably make a video about recommended character perspective links at a later date, but for general rule, you don't want more than 4 to 6 main perspective characters. So you can have 10 main characters, but only 4 to 6 of them should have POVs, unless you're George R. R. Martin, in which case, why, George? Why? Why so many character perspectives? I, on average, in my books have 4 character perspectives. I write in third person. I have about 4 character perspectives, and then I usually have a different perspective for the prologue and or the epilogue. And usually the characters that appear in those stories will not be main characters. They will be secondary, villains, heroes, random people. We don't know that, but that's just my base rundown. So once you know where the character perspective starts and ends, you're good. And finally, when you actually reach the outlining process, when you actually work on each given scene, you want a way to distinguish where the scene ends and where the scene begins. I use brackets. So my outlines have a lot of bracketed things. All of my scenes are distinguished by brackets, so I know open brackets, beginning of a new scene, closed brackets, end of a new scene. Usually I will put the setting, the date, and blank character name POV at the top. Then I'll do an indent, and then I will have all whatever I do for the scene later. And that's just how I outline each individual scene. But again, you can outline however you best see fit. You could use M dashes. You could use, let me look at my keyboards here. You could use dollar signs. You could use at signs. You could use weird calligraphic text marks. You could do whatever you want, but just make sure you have a way to distinguish where a scene ends and a scene begins. Step 4, work on your character's world and everything else. This one is basically just world building, guys. It's a secret. It's basically just world building. It's world building. Make sure that you have relatively developed ideas about your main characters, your villains, and your plots. I could make videos about every one of these things, but I don't have that time right now. So to keep this brief, because I could talk for hours and hours about this, do that. There you go. To that. Make sure that you have a grasp of all of these things, and especially your world. This is, I'd say, less important for maybe a contemporary writer, but if you're writing fantasy, you're writing sci-fi, you're writing historical, you really want a grasp of whatever world you're going to be used, whatever world you're using, and whatever you're going to be doing there. Do not go any further in the outlining process until you have some of these things in notes, in a document, in something, because these will help make the actual outline so much easier. You need to know your character's backstory. You need to know how your plot works. And you need to know at least somewhat who the villain in your story is. You could change it later. I have changed villains before. I have turned major villains into morally gray antagonists who sort of get a redemption arc. I have done this once or twice. It's okay, guys. You don't need to know everything, you just need to know some things. But don't worry if you're not done with all of this. This can also be come back to later. If you don't know one character's backstory, make a note. I need to figure out their backstory and just move on because you need a lot. But if you're stuck in world building forever, you'll get world builder's disease. And I don't want that for you. I want all of you to be able to finish your projects that you love dearly and that you want to see out in the world. Step 5, the 3-act structure. If you don't know what it is, again, don't worry. I will most certainly make a video about it at a later date. But until then, just to put it simply, it's a way to split your story into 3 separate acts, the beginning, the middle, and the end, and includes things like an inciting incident at the end of Act 1, a midpoint in Act 2, and a climax in Act 3. And this helps you sort of organize your structure. A lot of people, including one of my writing teachers, uses a 4-act structure. 3-act works best for my stories, but if you're interested in that, you should definitely look into the 4-act structure. I highly recommend it. It's a really important thing to use. You don't have to use it. This isn't, you have to use this structure. I'm not that kind of person, guys. You don't have to do anything. But if you're starting out, it's a really great way to organize your writing. I also, mind you, don't actually use all of the 3-act structure. I usually only use the inciting incident, the midpoint, and the climax. When I'm working on it, I know sort of the nation of it. I know what I need. I know I need rising action in Act 2. But really, it just sort of helps you organize your story. A quick breakdown of a couple things that you want to include. Act 1 should be less than a third of your story, and it should end with the character being thrust into an inciting incident that brings your main character into the plot. This can be anything. Inciting incidents can even be Chapter 1, Chapter 2. They can be early. A good example of Act 1, in the DreamWorks film How to Train Your Dragon, Hiccup accidentally hits the Night Fury, later named Toothless, with a bola? I think it's a bola. I don't know. I'm not good at Viking weaponry. And this eventually throws him into the story of learning that actually dragons aren't all evil and they're just cute, cuddly cats. And I love Toothless. He's amazing. Act 2 should be the longest section of your novel. Your characters should have challenges. Your characters should have ups and downs. It should really be like a roller coaster or a wave or a mountain. And it should include your characters should fail and they should triumph, and it should go back and forth. There should also be a midpoint that grabs the reader's attention. Something dramatic can happen, a battle, a fight, a falling out between characters, something that really ups the stakes, that really brings in the danger. My pro tip, end your midpoint on a cliffhanger, on some dramatic thing that makes them want to keep reading, because the midpoint can often be a point where a reader goes, yeah, no, I'm kind of bored of this book. Leave them wanting more. I'm a big fan of cliffhangers in my midpoints. I write a lot of cliffhangers. I'm a big proponent for them. This is me watching CW shows during lockdown, but yes, end on a cliffhanger. And Act 3 should include a climax that ends with the conflict resolution. Villain is defeated, cast out of the fire, Sauron is defeated, all the good stuff. Your heroes triumphantly prevail, or if you're writing a story with a morally gray character, they succeed. Someone wins the Iron Throne, someone kills the dragon, everything succeeds. A big piece of the 3-act structure, i.e., when you're going through and making a 3-act structure on your document for your outline, when in doubt, leave it out. Remember that, folks. When in doubt, leave it out. You can go back to this later, okay? Make a note. I don't know what happens here. This scene? No, I don't know this. I'll figure it out later, but leave a note for yourself. I do that all the time, and you can always add another draft to your outline. I'm currently on, I think, 7 outline drafts for the book I'm currently writing, and I might do another draft of Act 3 while I'm writing the book. Finally, step 6. After you have everything prepared, start coming up with scene ideas and start writing the scenes. Not actually writing scenes, writing outlines for the scenes. Maybe a paragraph, maybe a sentence, but expand each given scene with all of these previous information as much as you like. Once you have everything prepared, use this sort of framework or whatever variation that you've come up with for yourself to start coming up with the paragraph examples for the scenes. So for instance, in Pride and Prejudice, which I'm reading right now, again, great book, you have one scene where Elizabeth and her sisters end up at a ball. And who do they meet at the ball? You want to include all the characters they interact with. You want to include how she overhears Mr. Darcy saying something that offends her and starts with this whole character spiral of an enemies to lovers relationship. And that is what you'd want to include in that scene. The who, the what, the when, the where, the why, as well as any details that's important to you. Say the color of the clothes is important to you. Include that detail. Say the smells are important to you, the atmosphere. Say you even have an idea for a description, include it in this outline. Include it in this scene and then move on to the next scene. There will be scenes you don't want to write, and that's fine. Work on them later. And just leave it like that, an outline scene by scene by scene. Now, you'll see that I haven't discussed chapter spacing in this video. That is because chapters, I am a firm believer, can be dealt with later. You like chapters? That's fine. I like chapters too. You do not need to know about the chapters as you are writing. You can figure chapters out later. I would say you don't want any given chapter to be more than 4 scenes, 5 scenes if they're long, 5 scenes if they're short. If you're a writer that wants short chapters, 1 or 2 scenes or 5 short scenes probably work for you. If you're a writer who likes long chapters, I'd say no more than 4 scenes in a given chapter, just, for the reader's sanity. Because super long chapters are not a thing that is easy to get through, and a lot of scenes and chapters can often make them longer. So just, again, keep that in mind. Also, forgot to mention quotes. If you got a good quote you want to include it. You really want your quotes, my darlings. I can tell you this right now, quotes are great. That's it. That's all the steps that you need to make a great outline. Now all you have to do is go back and outline again and again and again. Or you can stop at 2. You can be sane, unlike me, who makes 9 drafts of everything because I'm a crazy person who's a perfectionist. Feel no fear here, perfectionists. You can't be more perfectionist than me. It's not possible. 9 drafts. Huh. Anyways, keep going until you are happy with your outline. But again, as a perfectionist, I can tell you right now, you will probably never be truly happy with your outline. So eventually, when you have enough to get started, actually start writing your book. Motivation's an entirely different thing. We'll deal with that later. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I hope that my overly complex outlining techniques have not scared you off from writing forever. I hope that these tips help you with your own writing and encourage you to pursue whatever novel or story writing pursuit you are interested in. If you like this video, please consider subscribing for more and comment which tips were the most helpful for you, which you liked best, any sort of thing like that, and I would love to discuss outlining techniques with all of you. Goodbye, my lovely writers. I hope you have a delightful rest of your day, and I hope these outlining tips helped you in your writing journey. Bye.